All right, hello, I am Dan Clark, and welcome to my review of my Code Bootcamp, Reviture. So I joined Reviture like almost 2 years ago, and I haven't been with them since almost a year and a couple months ago. But I thought now would be a great time to give my review of it, since I no longer am a part of a contract, or there's no longer any expectations between me and them. So yeah. So what is Reviture, you might ask? Well, Reviture is a company, an IT company, that trains people in what they would call modern technologies, whatever that means to you, or whatever that means to them. And they make money, so by getting you a job, and then they take part of that money that the job would normally pay you, except they take part of that because they trained you. And they can justify that because they say their training cost is such and such and such, like $20,000 for what my training cost was. And they do this to jumpstart people's IT careers. So a lot of people want to give Reviture a bad slack, and I'm not affiliated with them at all. I just want to give you my honest to base opinion of why some people might give bad opinions and why my opinion might differ. I'm not saying they are bad, I'm not saying they're not bad, but I'll give you what I want to say. So to preface this, 2 years ago, I didn't have a job. So I didn't have a job, and I was previously teaching high school geometry and biology. So not really programming jobs or IT jobs at all. But my degree was in physics. And I didn't know many modern technologies, though I knew a little bit of Java and a little bit of C++, but I didn't know them good enough, or I didn't know the technologies good enough to be a software engineer or work in IT. So I didn't have a solid understanding of what it took to build applications, kind of like I do now. And I also didn't know if I even wanted to be a software engineer to begin with. Because of my physics degree, I could have gone many different routes. I was looking at optical engineering, going back to school for optical engineering, because that sounded really cool, lasers and eyesight, and I don't know, it sounds really cool. But I didn't go down that path. I chose software engineering because I like solving problems. So the kind of people that were in my batch, so my batch was my classroom that was trying to do the same things that I was, trying to get the same job that I was, and taught by the same teacher. They weren't all computer science majors. There was math majors, there was IT majors. There was some computer science, and there was some physics like me. But mostly, I would say they were mostly STEM majors. There were other batches that were more liberal artsy, English and hand wavy sciences, but not like my batch. So I wanted to start with saying, overall, with someone with my situation and someone without a computer science degree and no way into the industry, I think that Reviture was not that bad for me. They helped me a lot, and well, I want to address some of the points that some people have about Reviture that are bad. And it's not for everyone. I want to say that right now, because if you're not in a similar situation, or if you weren't even as lucky as me, because I got really lucky in some of the ways, and I will tell you some of the ways I got really lucky with Reviture. And make sure to triple click the like button to hear the lucky ways if you want to get lucky too. Boink. So people give Reviture a lot of flack for something you should stay far, far away from, and only do this if you're about to die and you're on the streets and you're begging for bread every day. But I wouldn't say that's always the case for why you should do it, but I mean, they might have some points. So I believe that people are just really afraid at the large sum of money that people will owe Reviture if they break their contract. And what does breaking their contract mean? It could mean saying right after you get trained by them, you suddenly just get a job at Google or something like that. And because of that, you're breaking their contract. It could be anywhere, really. It could be McDonald's down the street and you're breaking their contract. So you will owe them $20,000, or I think it might even be higher right now, $30,000, something crazy. And that is my honest opinion why so many people give bad reviews of Reviture. They just see this, you're stuck in this contract, and that's what you get. But let me look at some of those bad reviews. I mean, we can look at the good ones, but let's see. Unsuccessful boot camp. So this is so I guess this was the featured review. I guess Reviture picked this for them. But anyways, so let's look at it. So pros, they had paid training. I guess you get paid minimum wage. I mean, it's not really paid, honestly. If minimum wage is getting paid,
$600 a week or so, and then minus 200 to live there, which honestly I shouldn't have even done that because I could have just drove from my dad's place, but oh well. And then he learned a bunch. So I mean, that's true, you do learn a bunch, but is the bunch of stuff you learn actually useful for the job? And I'll get to that later on why it might not have been useful for me. So training was poorly executed. I agree. There's a lot of times where you're doing a lot of things and it doesn't really feel like there's a reason behind it. And some people don't even get hired because of managed poorly course. So for example, with my course, we were learning a bunch of technologies for one company, and some people didn't get hired from that company. All right, let me look at another review, maybe a 5-star here. So they pay for your training, subsidize housing, teach most desired technologies. I mean, that's opinionated, I guess. Professional and friendly culture. They were very friendly. I mean, they weren't evil. Like, they were never like, you have to do this or we're gonna, they didn't want to fine us. That's what I'm coming from. They taught soft skills. They really did. I felt like they really showed you how to be confident. Because we practiced it, we wore suits. Honestly, that was kind of annoying, especially in Florida, because who wears a suit as a software engineer or an IT person? Let's be real. $10K per year extra in high quality cost of living areas. I didn't experience that because Northern Virginia wasn't a high cost of living area, even though the people there, the county I was living in, Loudoun, made the most in the United States, but that's a different story, or the average most amount of money. And had to sign a 2-year contract. Yes, that is a con, but I got out of it. Lucky me. They have to go anywhere they send you in contiguous 48 states. First year of client, they're paid $45K. Yeah, low pay. Second is $60K. I mean, honestly, I didn't even get to that second part. And worked them for a third year. I don't even know why you would do this. It's $75K no matter where you are. That's just kind of crazy. Like, why would you stick with them unless you got a special contract or something like that? And then you have to work about 70 hours a week. So during training. And yeah, you might be able to do that, but honestly, I found it kind of fun working the technologies and learning them. So 70K or 70 hours a week, not bad when you're actually enjoying it. All right, so we saw the reviews. Why some people think it's bad, some people think it's good. But I want to give you my point of what I think about it. So they hype up their training too much. And what am I going to do with that? They target these newly graduated people, and they give these companies really high expectations that these newly graduated people, after taking a short amount of time, they'll become professional IT engineers or IT people. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think you can do that in a short amount of time without working at the company specifically. So they train you once, and once you have finished their 10 to 16 week training, mine was I think supposed to be 10 weeks, but I got to 11 weeks because we had to cover so much more, and we just didn't cover all of what we could in time. And they tell these companies that we're the hottest IT company or workers in the industry after going through this 10-week training, and people honestly slack off a lot as well. So in reality, you aren't the hottest, and oftentimes you're the last pick if you go through Reviture, but you're just overtrained a little bit. So most of the people that go through Reviture are the people that take it as a last-ditch effort. They see all the bad reviews, they don't care, I just need a job, this is what I'm going to do. And this is why it's a last-ditch effort for many companies or many people. But companies don't know that. They see, they go through this training, and they don't see that they're hiring the last-ditch effort people. Some of them can be good, like me, but some of them can be just garbage collectors. Nothing wrong with garbage collecting, by the way. It's a nice hobby. So in my opinion, the training was rushed for me. And what I mean by that was we learned a lot of things in a short period of time. And by a lot of things, I mean a lot of technologies that weren't all used. So for example, I've went over a bunch of what I've learned in some other videos, but I've learned Java, HTML, SQL, CSS, JavaScript, Spring, Express, React, Redux, and a lot more. And honestly, how much of that I've used on the job? Probably half. I use HTML. I haven't really used much SQL because I use mostly serverless, but I have used a little bit of SQL. CSS, yeah, I guess I can use that. I use a little bit of JavaScript. I guess I do mainly do JavaScript. I don't do Spring or Express. Those are two server-side technologies. Instead, I use serverless with Lambdas and CDK. And I used React and Redux later as well. So all these technologies are too much for the amount of time to fully master all these technologies. In my opinion, they should have taken half of these and just fully mastered them. Just do projects on some of these instead of doing a project on each of these technologies over and over again. Once you learn JavaScript, you suddenly switch to Java and start learning Spring and try to do. I mean, of course they have their similarities, but it can definitely confuse some people. And I don't know. For me, I find it enjoyable learning a lot, but I know a lot of people did not like learning at that pace. So let me go through my day-to-day experience. So when you join Revachur, you're put in a batch. And like I mentioned, it's 15 to 30 people sometimes less, sometimes more. But I think we had 30 because our trainer was really good, or I guess he was supposed to be pretty good. And he can teach that many people, 30 people. It's kind of like a high school classroom. It's what I taught in high school, that many people. So it's a lot of people, honestly, and you don't have much one-on-one time, but that's okay. You spend the whole day with this class, and you get to know your teachers and the people around you. And they became my roommates once I got a job at where I work now. And you're taught by the single teacher for the whole 10 weeks or 15 weeks or however long it takes. So you really get to know them, and you really get to know all their quirks. So I believe my batch was special because we were the first batch from Revachur ever that was targeted to go to Cognizant. So I don't work for Cognizant, by the way. So we were targeted to work for Cognizant. What that means by that is Cognizant gave a bunch of requirements for Revachur to teach us. So they said, oh, you got to learn Spring, you got to go learn this language, this language, this language. So they pointed all these things, and it was basically a wish list, honestly. It's like what companies have on their applications, job applications. They have a wish list of all the things they need to know, and it's honestly a lot of things. So Revachur is like, okay, we got to teach them everything, because that's what they asked for. And I mean, I don't think I work for Cognizant. I don't want to lie, but so anyways, yeah. So if you don't know what Cognizant is, it's another contracting company that is part of Which, that contracts people out to other companies. And if you don't know what Which is, it is the worst companies in the tech industry. So for example, Wipro is the W, Infosys is the I, TCS is the T, and then Cognizant, which we were targeted for, was the C, and then the H is HCL. Because we were Cognizant's first ever batch, it was an experimentation from Cognizant and Revachur. They weren't sure what technologies were needed from us. So that's why they just threw everything at us. I don't think every batch from Revachur will be like that, though. So this indecisiveness in our training led to a mismatch of way too many technologies that, honestly, I didn't use any of on the job, or not much of on the job. So this isn't technically totally Revachur's fault, honestly. It is mainly Cognizant's fault, and partly Revachur's fault because not everyone went to Cognizant, but Cognizant also said they wanted too much. It was too big of a wish list, honestly. And they could have done a better job of communicating what was expected and what was honestly feasible and reasonable for a batch to learn in such a short period of time. So in my opinion, you don't need to learn as many back-end or server-side technologies. Starting out as I did, because we just learned Spring and Express, you can just pick one and master it really, and kind of, as long as it's somewhat modern, you should be good as long as you master it, eventually. You don't even have to go through a boot camp to do that. You can always branch out later into different ones, the new modern, serverless, server, Docker, whatever it is. So one of my training also had little impact for what we did on the job. On the job, we didn't use any of these server technologies, and instead we opted for serverless technologies with AWS Lambda. And of course, I didn't really have a choice in that, but it's just what it was. And we also learned AWS a lot as well. That's part of the reason why I guess made this channel. I made a lot of AWS videos, but yeah. So in reference to what companies you're going to be sent to, it's completely random. I mean, you don't really get a choice, and I guess not completely random because they tend to target companies that have already, I guess, had clients sent to them. So for example, you might get sent to Capital One, which is a decent company, honestly. It's like a FANG feeder company. Or you might get sent to Netflix. That's what I've heard people sent to Netflix either. I'm not saying I work at either of these, or I do. I'm not saying that, but those are kind of the nice ones. I do believe it's few and far between. You might work at McDonald's, and honestly, that's not bad because the McDonald's I hear is just doing IT for McDonald's or software engineering. It's not, you're not actually working at doing some fries at McDonald's. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know, but do I work for McDonald's? Maybe. So I got lucky. I got sent to a solid company.
I know people that got sent to like the Cognizant, like I mentioned, and they were contracted out again, and it was just all a headache. They were honestly sitting like in, they were just sitting there and doing nothing for many, many months. So I got sent to a solid company that bought out my contract. Once again, that can happen to a lot of these things. Their contract gets bought out. So what that means is you work for the new company, you no longer are associated with Revoture, so you can get a new job at that point. I didn't do that because my company was nice. But they did mention that I was expected to continue and spend the rest of my 2-year contract at my company, current company, in which I did do that. So it was expected. I'm not really sure what that expectation meant, but I don't think you would get fined for that. Maybe you would, I don't know. But I didn't know anyone that did either. So I do know many people that were not as lucky. For example, my coworker that was sent to my same company that I was, and we worked like right next to each other like for a whole year. Like we basically did the same thing for the whole year, except after that year was up, we switched teams. He went to a new team. I went to a different team as well. And I don't know if this was luck. I don't know if it was skill, but the company said they no longer had funds for him, and they didn't buy him out like they bought out my contracts. So his contract wasn't bought out, and a couple months later he was like let go from my company, so he had to go back to Revoture training, which meant he got paid the $8 an hour or whatever minimum wage was, which was really sucks, especially because he was already living with us. He already had an apartment, or he already had to pay rent, so it's kind of hard to pay rent for $8 an hour. But yeah, so that kind of sucks. So eventually, though, he did, maybe after a month or two, he got sent back to a different company, I think like somewhere in Florida or something like that. And yeah, so I wouldn't do this if you want to stay in one place at a time, because you're going to move no matter what. I mean, maybe not no matter what. Like I hear some people like stayed in Tampa for the training and stayed in Tampa for the job, but that's probably not likely. So I want to touch on the pay a little bit here, because most people get jobs to get paid, and so the minimum they could pay you was $45,000 a year, which is honestly probably, I think, is it less than the average in the United States? It's very low, especially for software engineers or IT people, because they need to make money, or Revoture needs to make money off of us, so that's why it's so low. So for a software engineer or IT consultant, this is unprecedentedly low. In many cost of living areas like California or New York, it's unlivable, actually. You would have to get like 5 roommates or something like that crazy just to live in like California, like Silicon Valley or New York, because the rent is so high there. So that's why they give you like a 10K bonus, which honestly isn't comparable to the amount of the cost of living increase. So many theorize that Revoture making way more off of you than what your contract is worth. So for example, if you break your contract, you get to pay $20,000, which was like my time, of course. Of course, it's probably going to be higher eventually. So I don't believe their training was worth $20K, like as I mentioned before with some of the bullet points, although I did learn a lot, which I am thankful for. I could have taken many Udemy courses for less than $1,000, like less than $500, or like $10 courses, honestly. At the time, though, I didn't know which ones to take, and I wouldn't know which technologies to learn. So yeah, was it worth it to know which things to learn? Probably not. But what was worth it, though, was a guaranteed job for me. So I can't complain about that. Would I do it again? Probably not. It's too risky. I got lucky. Yeah, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments about how I got here, and hopefully Revoture doesn't see this and say, oh, we're finding this guy because he's talked bad about us. I mean, I didn't really talk that bad, honestly. Yeah, I know people were talk a lot more badness, because I think some people did get fined and they did have to pay it off like after a certain amount of time, but I didn't. I was lucky, and yeah, hope you enjoyed. I'll talk to you later. Peace.